Hello, and welcome to our Behavior Health 911 event. I am Melissa Silva, the Executive Director of the Louisiana Mental Health Association. Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation. We are grateful to our community partners, especially the local governing entities that have worked with us to produce this event. LAMHA also appreciates Louisiana Department of Health Office of Behavioral Health for sponsoring today's and 9 other events across the state. We also want to thank our panel for sharing their time, expertise, and their lived experience. Over the recent years, the Louisiana Mental Health Association has worked with our partners to identify critical issues in our local communities and our state. And in response, we offer these informative discussions on behavior health that affect both our youth and adult populations. As our state continues to work to improve programs and services for those most in need, Louisiana Mental Health Association stands tall in our efforts to educate and advocate for those same individuals. Conversations like the one today are a small but a pivotal step towards breaking the stigma surrounding mental and behavior health and seeking the help one may need. Before we start this discussion today, I would like to highlight a few of our spring events. Louisiana MHA will be bringing you our virtual public policy on March 2nd, 2023. This is to make it easier for those of you to attend across the state. Our 6th annual conference will be held on April 25th through 26th, 2023, and will feature live virtual sessions. Finally, our Behavioral Health Day at the Capitol will be held on May 4th, 2023. More information on all of the events will be forthcoming, but we ask that you save these dates on your calendars now. Today's panel has been pre-recorded so that we eliminate the risk of technical challenges. There will be a live Q&A after the presentations and the speakers will join us. Please put your questions in the chat. You can add them now, or you can wait till the live Q&A section. Following the event, you will receive evaluation. Please help us improve these events by completing that. Again, I want to thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you learned much from our panel of experts. Have a great day.
Hello, I'm Dr. Rochelle Head Dunham, and I serve as the Executive Director and the Medical Director for Metropolitan Human Services District. Today, though, we want to bring to you a conversation that centers around the changing landscape of compulsive gambling. Now, many of you all may not be aware of the fact that compulsive gambling is very, very problematic and in some cases can be deadly because of the desperation that it creates for so many individuals who, unbeknownst to them, cannot gamble casually. Their gambling often results in compulsive behaviors for which they're driven to do without control. Those situations can create interpersonal problems, which includes relationships and family being destroyed. It includes problems with employment for kids, educational issues, but there's help out there. Metropolitan Human Services District provides services out of its 5 clinics for addiction, mental illness, and intellectual and developmental disabilities for people who are indigent, uninsured, or have Medicaid. We want to make those services known to you, but we also want to make this problem known to you. So if you or someone you know is suffering from a compulsive gambling disorder and is in crisis as a result, please have them call our crisis line at 504-826-2675, or you can call our main number, 504-568-3130, for an appointment or for a consultation even. I also want you to be aware that we are now partnering with Bridge House to deliver residential services for individuals who have co-occurring addiction as well as compulsive gambling disorders. So if you or someone you know needs services, please do not hesitate to reach out to us for support, because MHSD truly is a place where we change lives.
Okay, so here's my story from, I could say 2019 was probably one of the worst years of my life, and one of the best, because in all, I got freed from something that I've been hiding for a very long time. And that was a gambling problem. So I'll go back prior from 2019 that probably been going on for at least 5 years, 5 to 6 years, online gambling that put me and my family in a place where I would never want to be again. Financially, just losing relationships with friends, family, and putting a wedge in between a very close family at one point. So started out with me in control of a family, a benefit account that me and my cousin also shared that helped out cancer patients in the area, or just St. Jude in general, where we would donate money through a co-ed tournament. I think we was altogether 12 years in that raised a lot of money that helped out a lot of people. In that 12 years, in 2013, my cousin that I was partnered with that did this benefit, that actually he started because his twin brother died in 95 with the same disease that he died with 18 years later, that we started this co-ed tournament in his honor, in his name. So we did this with us and family and friends that for years raised a lot of money. In 2013, he passed away. That left me in charge of basically going on with the benefit and in control of the funds. Being the sole person kind of in control of the funds, that I really didn't have no one looking at me for as the money and things like that. You know, money was getting donated, so that's all that mattered. But in the meantime, that I was actually using some of the money for my gambling issue. Fast forward, I think 2019, his family, which is my uncle and my aunt, kind of had suspicions or whatever. I don't know what all transpired from them kind of having an issue with some of the money, or just never really questioning anything, but somehow it came up and I had to come clean basically with everything. And I think all together that I end up having to pay back was $26,000, give or take. But just the emotional, the just embarrassment, the guilt of doing that. Still to this day, we're looking at almost 3 years, 4 years later, that it still hasn't. My family is still kind of split. We really don't talk as we used to. It's because of what I've done, single-handedly what I've done. No longer the tournament, it goes on. If they raise money on their own, or just simply send a check through a mail to St. Jude or whatever charity they choose. But no more co-ed tournament that we've done for years. And it was solely because of me that it stopped. Since then, I did Miss Green's program for 2 years, graduated a year or so ago. And I couldn't have, without the help of my wife and my family, my mom and dad, it wouldn't have happened. My wife actually found Miss Green that put me in the program, that got me the help that I needed. And I think it was once a week that we met. We had a family night. And once I saw the hurt on my family that I'd done, it made everything clear to me that what happened. So now just accepting it, living with it, It happened. I can't change it. But I'm a better person going through it. And I'm actually, and I say this to tell anybody that's ever been through any kind of gambling or any kind of addiction, that once it happens and you get caught, or however it comes out that you have a problem, it is the worst and best day of your life, because it's over. And the hiding I did, the trying to, if I'm taking $1,000 out of this account, I'm trying to move it and trying to win that $1,000 back to put it back, and then I never get to put it back. And then that's always on my mind, going to bed, thinking of all this stuff, and how I'm gonna put this money back and what I'm gonna do to win the next bet, so nobody finds out. It's just a big burden that I'm glad it's not with me anymore. So with that being said, this is my story that I'm more than happy to tell. And I actually told Ms. Green that I'm welcome to come back anytime to just kind of sit in on meetings and just listen, because it helps. It still does. Appreciate it. Thank y'all.
Greetings. My name is Lionel Jackson. I am a compulsive gambler in recovery. My gambling experience began in 1996. College buddy of mine asked me to go to the casino to experience it for the first time. Didn't really interest me at first, but we were on our way out of the door, and we noticed these gentlemen playing blackjack. And so we saw the stacks of chips. If you know anything about a table players don't like for you to look over their shoulder because it's a superstition thing. And one of them said, "Hey man, you gonna play?" And I'm like, "Nah, I don't really have any money to play." So he was like, "I'm gonna put you in the game and see what you do." So he invited me and my friend to play, and make a long story short, we ended up walking out of there with $100. And that's basically how my journey began, and how I was introduced to the game of blackjack, which is my game of choice. And so from there, I was in college. I was probably a sophomore going into my junior year. I had met my first wife, and we were engaged to get married. And then me and my friend, we started going to the casinos pretty much every other day. And he would either loan me money to play or vice versa. And it got a little bit out of control. So we decided to part ways in that aspect, the gambling aspect, and go by ourselves. So as far as me, I continued to go and play blackjack and experiment with strategies, et cetera. And eventually started to spiral out of control. Started off at the $5 table and eventually graduated to the $15, $25 table. And it was a quick transition from, I probably started that March of 1996, and it transitioned quickly, escalated probably 2 months later, where I found myself on a $25 table. And you got to imagine I'm just a college student. And so the quick money, the wins, intoxicated me. I was intrigued. I enjoyed getting the fast money. And so eventually the winning turned into losing. And so I found myself what I now know is chasing my losses. And so with chasing my losses, I would write hot checks, and eventually, make a long story short, stealing out of my wife's purse at the time, stealing cash, and I just got out of control. I just became somebody. I just got out of my character. It led to my first divorce because I kind of pushed her away because I was like, "You could do better without me," because I didn't know who I was at the time. Gambling had just consumed my life. Graduated from LSU. I ended up teaching for the first time in West Feliciana Parish. I found myself spiraling out of control. My counselor, Ms. Matt Green, she refers to me as referred to me as a binge gambler because I could go 6 months, 9 months, even a year or two without gambling. But when I go, I make up for all that time that I've lost. I go very hard. I think it was 1999. After that binge that summer, I went to the Center of Recovery. Miss Janet, she's Miss Janet Miller now, but she was my counselor. My first trip to CORE, the Center of Recovery in Shreveport, Louisiana. But again, I was very young and really didn't know what was going on or what I had become because I was so consumed with gambling. So a lot of what I was taught, I absorbed, but implementation was the issue, the problem, because I thought that I could move away from the issue. I decided to move to Houston, Texas, and I thought that, found out they had charter buses that go to the casinos in Lake Charles, ended up binge gambling, and basically resigning from my teaching job because I was on a binge and missed work for about a week. So I eventually moved back to Baton Rouge and seek help, and eventually graduated from the program. I think I took another trip to CORE in 2008. Ended up getting married, having children, my second marriage, and in between my second marriage, I had spurts of binging. My pattern was we got married in 2007. I hadn't gambled since 2005. So you're looking at about 3 years of not gambling, being involved in Gamblers Anonymous, being involved with Capital Area Ms. Green, Daryl Abear. And in 2008, I found myself relapsing after going back to CORE. Went another 2 years without gambling, continued my teaching career in West Baton Rouge Parish, and also accomplished Teacher of the Year in 3 of the parishes. And so I've accomplished a lot, but I've also lost opportunities because of gambling. Because any addiction takes you away from your motivation, takes you away from your commitment to things, and takes you away from the people and things that you love to do. Because I was so consumed with getting to a blackjack table at times in my life, I prioritized blackjack over my family. I prioritized blackjack over my career aspirations, and it cost me. It cost me heavily. So I ended up getting divorced for a second time, and so after that second time, I really hit a major depression, and I've had 2 suicide attempts. And so to fast forward things, working through the depression, what I found out is that any addiction is a disease, and a disease is a dis-ease within the body. And my dis-ease was the emotional turmoil in my head carried so much guilt from my experiences that I caused the lying, the stealing, the manipulating to the people that I love, friends. I've lost friendships over, my actions related to gambling, and I've had legal consequences. But by the grace of God, I'm still standing. I met my lovely wife, and she accepted me for where I was during that time. I was just coming out of homelessness. I was at St. Vincent de Paul in a homeless shelter, and I had just started renting out a 1-bedroom apartment. And it wasn't even an apartment, it had multiple rooms, and I was just renting out a room. It wasn't even my own apartment. So I had multiple roommates. But that's what I needed to do to get a fresh start. So eventually I got my own apartment, and then me and my wife now, her name's Rita Jackson. And she's been my backbone. She encourages me. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And that's very important for anybody that's battling an addiction. You gotta have a strong support system. I couldn't do this alone. As much as I wanted to, as much as I felt like an alien, I thought I was the strangest person in the world. I'm like, who does this? Who keeps going back and throwing their life away over and over again? But what I come to find out was that I was actually sabotaging myself because I didn't feel like I deserved the good things in life. I didn't feel like I deserved it because I felt like I had done so many things wrong. Why should God bless me with anything? And so today, with that strong support system through, everything that I've been through, every experience that every experience that I've gone through has brought me to this point, good or bad. And so I'm thankful for those experiences because the pain was worth the good feeling that I have about myself. I can say to you, I love myself today. And 3 or 4 years ago, couldn't say that.
My name is Matricia Green. I am a licensed addiction counselor, and I'm also a certified compulsive gambling counselor. I've been treating addictions for 50 years, and I've been over gambling treatment for the capital area for 27 years. And I work with the capital area. I've been in this field with gambling for a long time. In fact, I started with Michael Duffy, who was over the state of Louisiana. We successfully opened several programs here in Baton Rouge. I was in the state office for a number of years as the person over gambling treatment for about 4 years. And then I stepped down and went to start treating clients because I'm just a lover of treating gamblers. And the reason I find it very interesting treating gamblers because it's different. And people look at me crazy when I say it's different. They say, well, what's the difference between gambling and what's the difference between substance abuse and some of the others? I said, gamblers are a little harder to treat because it's harder to get them in treatment. It's harder to get them to understand the addiction that comes with gambling. It's not a whole lot of difference, but the type of clients we deal with are mostly clients who have really professional jobs. You have clients who have regular jobs because that's how they gamble. We have clients who are very knowledgeable sometimes on these addictions. And so the embarrassment that comes with it is one of the things that keep them away. When we work with gambling don't discriminate. And I'm going to share some things with you here. We have a number of, and people don't believe this, adolescent gamblers, and people don't want to deal with that. People don't want to face that. They get on their computers and they pay their peers with money, get their parents' credit cards, gamble it away. We have the adults. They come to the casinos, and some of them, a large percentage of them come and they do recreational gambling. Recreational gambling is, example, I bring $100. When that's gone, I'm gone. I just may be walking around the casino looking or something. Problematic gambler is that gambler that brings his or her last dollars thinking they're gonna get more. And they might win some, they might get more, but what's gonna happen? They are gonna put it back. And usually they walk out of that door with nothing, or they've gone back and forth to the ATM machine and spent all their money. And now they're depressed and they're going home to their family. And that husband is thinking that their money is still in the bank. The wife is thinking from the husband that money is still in the bank, and it's gone. And see, with that, you have a lot of family conflict, but it don't stop anything. If that person's compulsive, they're gonna find another way to get back If they have to sell something, they take their paychecks and or go borrow money. That compulsive gambler do not know when to stop. And usually there are some real negative consequences that stops that gambler for a while. And that's when they have lost just about everything. They're probably losing their relationships with each other. The children are suffering. A lot of times they get arrested for stealing. And this goes on and on. You would think some of these things, when it happens, they are stopped, but no, they might stop for a while. And next thing you know, they're doing it again. I've had a number of experiences with treating compulsive gamblers. And I can tell you, it's hard, but once they decide and realize that they have a problem, they come in and they work a program. And we have a program for compulsive gamblers in every region, from region 1 to region 10. If you have a problem with problem gambling, this is what I want you to think about. Why am I gambling? You know, when you become compulsive about something, obsessed with it, and you gotta have it, what are you running? Ask yourself that. What's going on with me? And it could be grief. It could be you're just uncomfortable with where you are in your life now. It could be you've had some major losses. And it don't necessarily have to be death losses. Just stop and think about it. Because I know when you're gambling, you'll be trying to figure out, I know my clients say, I don't know why. And it's not until they do a thorough inventory of their life and what's going on in their life that they may start to begin to come in contact with what may be happening. And that's when you really need to make connection with counselors to help you through this. Everything is confidential. I don't care what therapist you go to. I don't care what treatment center you go to. Everything's confidential. Nobody can discuss your treatment unless you sign a release form. I don't care if it's your wife, I don't care if it's your husband, I don't care if it's your mother or your father. You have to give them permission to do so, because your anonymity is very important. On the other hand, you are very important. You have to want something for yourself. You know, I think saddest thing that I have done in treatment is when I have my groups and someone graduates, their family, you know, family gets involved in their recovery. And I did an exercise where when you're thinking about gambling and you're away from your family and they know what you're doing, okay, what it feels like. Are they thinking you're not coming home? Because some of them don't come home. Some of them lose so much money, they commit suicide. Suicide is a high rate for compulsive gambling. You take all your money out the bank. You haven't told your spouse, what am I going to do? I'm about to lose the house. And what am I to do? You're scared. You're afraid to tell anybody. So what comes to your mind? I no longer want to live. I've had a number of clients who have attempted suicide. Thank God they didn't succeed. But these are some of the things that happen when you gamble. And some of you use the drugs along with the gambling, which makes it worse. But I don't want you to ever think that you can't get the help that is needed for you. You can, it's there. So that's the thing. So many people have so much shame, they don't want to talk about it. You're not ashamed to go into that casino. Why should you be ashamed to talk to a counselor? Talk to your wife, talk to your husband. Yeah, they're gonna be angry, which I'm not telling them, but you come together. There are programs that like we have that's gonna treat the husband and the wife together. We're gonna educate you about this disease called compulsive gambling. It could happen to anyone, anyone. And you got to sit down and get honest and get the help that you need. It is so important that you do that. I don't care if there's somebody out there is going to hear this. There's a number of people probably out there is going to hear this. You deserve a healthy life, a healthy family. We all make mistakes. Call that 800 number. Any region you live in, everything is confidential. And I keep saying that because that's an important factor in people coming to treatment. Talk to somebody. Got some awesome counselors out there. Awesome. And just come in and call them and make an appointment. And they're going to sit down with you and they're going to talk to you. And they're going to help you through this crisis. Go to GA. GA is a support group for people struggling with compulsive gambling. They teach you another way to live and how to respond with this addiction. There's Gam-Anon for the spouse of the person that's gambling. They teach you how not to be an enabler. Because what keeps a gambler gambling is if they're being enabled by a family member or someone. You know that that person is gambling. You know you're in trouble, but still the money's going out of the house without any consequences. It's happening. And you're allowing it to happen. You need to learn what you as a significant other can do. We have casinos all over. You walk into a casino and you'll sit there and you'll gamble all day long. But you need to walk into one of these clinics and say, I need help. You need to talk to someone and say, I need help. And again, I say, somebody is out there, you're listening, follow your man, get the help. Don't worry about, don't be embarrassed. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Be proud of yourself that you're going to take that initiative and say, I'm going to get my help. I'm going to get it. And when you do that, you're going to feel so much better. So much better. When your children look at this, they see you. Now, when I first started, I was telling you about children. People won't believe we have more children gamblers than sometimes we have adult gamblers. And like, how is that? Well, they get on that computer, they play their little buddies, like I said. They steal mama's credit card or mama's money that she's got around, trade their tennis shoes. They play basketball, they bet each other, and parents are in denial of that. When your children see you gamble, guess what? They think it's okay. Or when you go buy some scratch offs and your daughter or your son say, Mama, let me scratch something. Guess what? You're introducing your child to gambling. That's what you're doing. And when you see them doing something like that, then you're going to wonder, well, how did you get that? They saw you do it. And as I was telling you about CORE has a program that I can tell you, once you leave that program, you'll be a different person. very different person. Because you think gambling is just about the money. It's not. It's not even about the money. Seriously, it's not even about the money. As I said, it's about you. I hope somebody's thinking about that. I really hope you're thinking about this. It's about you. What is it about you, Joe, Jack, Jill, that you have that need to just put yourself in this disappearing type situation? Because that's what it is when if you ever been in a casino, you pass by somebody and talk to them, they'd be ready to hurt you because you know, according to them, you mess with their luck. And you have, I challenge any of you to, if you're listening at me tonight, get a quiet spot in your house and write down the things that upset you, the things that bother you. I'm not talking about the gambling part of it. I'm talking about the other issues in your life. Find your counselor. That counselor will assess you. You get treatment. You're going to be, but if you gamble, we want you to be able to tell us we gamble so we can get you back on track, because we're not going to be enablers. We want you to get the help that you need. And if you need it, let your family be involved. Get honest with your family, because now you can gamble from your phone. I can sit there and my husband would be thinking I'm playing a game, a little game, and here I hit lost $3,000 already of our money, and I'm wondering how am I going to put it back? And he don't even know I'm gambling. If you're hurting, that's why we're doing this. I hope I was able to help someone to get the help that you need. Thank you very much for listening.
This is Janet Miller. I am the Executive Director for the Louisiana Association on Compulsive Gambling. And I was asked to come here today to talk to you and the population that are watching this video about gambling disorders, which I have been working with and treating since the late 90s and been working with the Louisiana Association on Compulsive Gambling since 1999. We helped establish in that year the first residential gambling treatment center for Louisiana, as well as in 2000, we started the Louisiana Problem Gambling Helpline. And since then, also developed another treatment center in New Orleans and also outpatient programs throughout the state. We have helped with training, different avenues of help. And so what I really wanted to start with today was the discussion, what is gambling disorder and what it isn't, is it is not something of a mental health issue only. What it is in 1980 was the DSM-3 categorized it in the area of a mental illness of impulsive control disorder. What happened was they developed an idea that it was compulsive, impulsive, and so they called it compulsive gambling disorder, and that was in 1980 in the DSM-3. Since then, the DSM-4 changed the title of gambling disorder or compulsive gambling disorder to pathological gambling disorder, leaving it still in the category of impulse control disorders. However, as research and studies were pointing to and understanding more about gambling disorders, was that in 2013, so almost 10 years ago, the DSM-5 recategorized gambling disorder to the addiction area, which is well overdue, even 10 years ago, and also titled it gambling disorder, removed pathological, removed compulsive. So it's important that we call this what it is and not use some other terms. However, there are two terms or two names that come about throughout our community. You'll hear these names on some commercials or certainly through the gambling industry. That will be problem gambling. Problem gambling term is any behavior that is gambling related that causes harm to the player or the family. Very different than gambling disorder, People can have a problem with gambling, can have a problem with alcohol and drugs, can have a problem with some mental health issues, but it doesn't mean that it's an addiction or a true disorder. Gambling disorder is identified as a severe and persistent problem with gambling behavior, and it is an addiction. So it's important that we identify that this is an addiction that should be treated as such. It's been 10 years in knowledge of that in the medical field, yet we're still catching up sometimes in our medical field locally as well as our communities. We cannot treat, as we've found out over the last 20 to 25 years, gambling disorders the same as substance use disorders. Many times in the beginning days, often we thought that we could place people with gambling disorders in the same realm of treatment tracks and treatment therapies as those who had substance use disorders, mainly because it was and is an addiction, and there are some similarities. What we found out in years since then, and certainly in the last 10 years, is there are far greater differences at times, differences that certainly as a clinician or as a community member or family member, is that we want to make sure we appreciate and also understand that difference. And so clinicians need to be properly trained with gambling disorder, with the proper techniques or best practices with this disorder, and also to be very open to be under supervision with other clinicians or professionals and work in collaboration, because most of the time we see people with co-occurring or triple occurring disorders or addictions. And so one of the studies that we have been working on and looking at in the last 20 years is watching the incidence of substance use disorders with gambling disorders. Depending on which study people are looking at across the nation and in other countries, it can be at the lower end of 35% of those who have gambling disorders will also present with a substance use disorder, up to what we have seen is 60% of the same answer rate. What we have seen is a higher incidence, 73 to 84, almost 85% of the population we treat with gambling disorders have a mental health concern. First and foremost, what we have been seeing through different studies and research is anxiety disorders. So that can come in different forms and different ways that the person develops those. Also mood disorders and depression. So what we've had to work on in treatment and assessing the person with gambling disorders is, did they have the gambling disorder and it in turn develop this secondary or co-occurring depression or anxiety or mood disorders, or were they first having problems with anxiety, mood disorders, depression? Because again, it's a higher number, a higher study rate than even substance use. And did the effects of gambling that affected their brain change how they felt in their anxiety, depression, or moods? And so what we're seeing is the answer is yes, which is not what most of us like to hear as clinicians or professionals. Is we would like to have it all identified and detailed out, at least I would. However, what I do know is this, after working with gambling disorders for almost 30 years, is that we need to be very well skilled in all areas of other addictions and other potential mental health issues. One of those being that I have been following some studies with Dr. John Grant, Dr. Brewer, Dr. Litchfield, and others that are out there, is the evidence base that there is sexual impulsivity, sexual different behaviors that somebody will present when they also present with gambling disorders, which I find interesting because both of those problems, both of those disorders can be hidden and invisible. So the only way that you can identify first, then assess test or screen for gambling disorders, we have to ask the question, do you gamble? And the second thing with sexual behaviors, we have to ask those questions too. Since they are not seen or we cannot screen for them like substance use disorders, which has been highly effective for those of us working in addiction field, is if our patients tell us they are not drinking or using, we can certainly take urine, blood, hair, nail, different samples to identify if somebody has been using and even how long ago or the levels or thresholds of those use of substances. With gambling and sexual behaviors, that is irrelevant. And there is no testing per se for this. So what I have found over the years in doing some smaller study groups at CORE, our residential treatment center, is that in private, we are to ask those questions. And certainly as a clinician, we need to be comfortable with that. And if we're not, again, that's why we collaborate with other professionals and other people that are comfortable talking about sexual areas. But that if we start asking about their concerns about their sexual behaviors or someone else's concern with their sexual behaviors, then what we can find is a truer answer. And oftentimes people will tell us the truth if we ask the question, but the question has to be asked first. And that's up to us in our responsibility as a professional to ask our patients all areas of concerns, just like I'm going to ask my patients, are you taking your medicine? How are you sleeping? Have you been eating, exercising? I am going to ask those things. I need to be asking, as I would encourage you to do, is ask the same questions about gambling and ask them over and over again because we cannot screen for it. And if we know of a patient of ours who has gambling disorder and may have, without thinking of it being a gender or sometimes gender neutral disorder with sexual behaviors, we need to ask men and women alike about whether there is some concerns in sexual areas with them. And so this fascinating work that's going on out there, I encourage all of you to Google and research it and let me know what you find out as well. And so what we want to make sure is that we address in the clinical approach for gambling disorders is different for certain areas. One is we have found that there are layers of grief and grief processes that we have to walk through as a clinician, helping the person who has gambling disorder as well as the family. One of the most obvious areas that we know that they've lost is money or their financial securities. So we want to process that, but we also have seen over the years that there is a layering of effect of losses that many people who present with gambling disorder have. One, people losses through death. And what's happened is they've occurred at a timely rate that there's almost no time to process one loss before another loss occurred. So if you're working with a patient who has multiple losses, and that could be in any area that we can think of, then also explore with them if they've been gambling in their recovery of mental health issues, in their recovery of substance use, making sure that we're asking the appropriate questions, even for those patients who are in recovery or stable in recovery, because they can be doing this behavior without us asking the question. The other thing that we see that is imperative to working with someone who needs recovery from gambling disorder is to address the financial aspect. There is a different response emotionally and in historical factor for the person with gambling disorder. So if you're going to help someone, but you're not comfortable as a clinician or even a family member or community friend of someone who has a gambling disorder with the area of talking about finances or budgets or debt or counseling of that, then please refer them to your local agencies, which we have across the state. And sometimes I tell people that most people would like to help people. So if there isn't an open agency of debt counseling and family credit debt counseling, anything that assists them in looking at their debt and developing budgets and financial plans, then locally ask your bankers, ask accountants, ask financial planners who would be willing to give of their time pro bono to help us to help our people in these areas. I cannot stress this enough of how important this is and how helpful this is to gambling disorder people to have such assistance and resources and referrals to help with debt consolidation, debt reconciliation, not debt bankruptcy, because that is most often where people that I work with would like to think to go. But we want them to do things that afford them to pay the restitution, to get out of the debt, because what can happen for them if the debt is lifted too quickly in recovery is it can ease off the pressure. And oftentimes people who have mental health issues or substance abuse issues, and we do with gambling disorders, is that families and friends don't want any pressure on them. Well, what we have noticed with gambling disorder population is that pressure on them is actually inciting some positive energy and some wherewithal to get a job, to get a second job, to think again, to get out of the box, to receive help. And so generally speaking, if we're helping people in the areas that not only assist them with recovery, then we have to address the recovery in debt and recovery from poor financial decisions. But if people knew how to develop a budget, live on a budget, they would do that. And so we need to help them to do that. And if you're not comfortable doing that, then receive help and resources in your local community. That's what we started with. And then eventually at CORE, the residential treatment center, we developed some programs within the treatment program that helps them to start addressing their emotional responses to money, reactions to debt, forward budget planning and financial, freedom for them. And so we start that the first week of treatment. And I think that's highly important. In support groups around the country, there are things that do that as well. And so it's important for us to learn from the people who are already assisting other people in recovery, as we have in other self-help support group populations. And so they too work with people on finances, budget planning, debt repayment areas. And so many counselors or many people, when I go to churches or community events to talk to them about gambling disorder and what to look for and what not to do, is this: how do I know, or how do I ask someone if they're having a problem? What's a quick test for that? I say there's two questions, and it's called the lie bet question. And basically the first one is, have you ever lied to anyone important to you about your gambling behavior? The reason that's important is because in 2022 and soon 2023, most people of gambling approved age have gambled. In fact, some people before that age. And so what we want to do is accept the reality that there's a lot of gambling. And so if someone is starting to lie about something that's been normalized in our society or neutralized almost in how we respond to gambling now, we want to pay attention if they're starting to lie about that to someone important to them. It's not important to me that they lie to people at work because there's might need to, but it's important to me that those people who have an investment in where money goes, that they have an investment in the mental health of someone else in their family or friends, if they're beginning to lie about that, that could be a red flag. So if there's a yes to that, you can move on to getting them some resources and help. But the second question, if there's a yes to this one, would definitely mean you need to move them into getting resources and get a full assessment for gambling disorder just to rule it out. Or if it's ruled as appropriate that they may have the disorder, then to get them proper help. And the second question is, have you ever felt the need to bet more money? What that starts establishing is if they're noticing an increase of money spent, then what's happening is a loss of control. And what we see with that is most of us like to control, especially about our money and about our behaviors. So if they're starting to notice that they're needing to bet more money, then they are in a red zone for us. So any one of those questions, if they say yes to, I would move them on to calling the Louisiana Problem Gambler Helpline, 1-877-770-STOP. The other number that they can call in Louisiana is the National Council Problem Gambling number, which rolls to the helpline in Louisiana, which is 1-800-GAMBLER. Across the nation, most of our states are moving to that particular number so that we can have one number posted all over the US that anywhere, anytime people can call and get routed to their proper state helplines and get help and resources for that. So it's 1-800-GAMBLER. And it's toll-free, confidential, and we answer it in Louisiana. In fact, our organization answers that. And like I said earlier, it's been answered by us since the year 2000. So we have 365 days, 24 hours, 7 days a week answering. It's a live person, never automated. And so we are here all the time to answer questions for those who are gambling disordered or problem gambling or family and friends. The other thing that I wanted to touch on today was that gambling in the US and beyond the US and other countries has actually been at the all-time high the last couple of years, mainly because most of us know now that sports wagering and online gambling has increased the accessibility of gambling for everyone. It used to be people would have to get dressed, get out to their car, drive across some place in town and go to a brick and mortar we call casino, or sometime an establishment or truck stop or whatever to gamble. That is no longer the case, and certainly not in Louisiana. And so what we've seen are people have easier access to something. It does show a higher rate or incidence of addiction at times. And because Louisianans have a higher access rate now to online gambling, to sports wagering, to all the different platforms available, that it's just so easy to access that we are seeing more and more people calling the Louisiana Problem Gambler Helpline and identifying sports wagering or online gambling as their play of choice. In fact, as high as 73% of the callers last year identified sports as their game of choice. It didn't mean that they didn't gamble other ways. So we're seeing a change in that type of person who's gambling. And it's not just younger people. So we often will think that the internet or the phone use or whatever is more for the younger population, let's say 18 to 36, 35-year-olds. No, it is not just that. Because it's so accessible, we need to be asking those people who are maybe housebound, who may have medical and mental disorders that inhibit them from going out to a brick and mortar casino or truck stop or whatever to gamble, because now they have accessibility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to gamble online and different techniques of gambling. And so in order to address this going forward for our nation, Louisiana Association on Compulsive Gambling through CORE, our outpatient programs and our helplines, we are training up to learn the language and the lingo and the different techniques for faster movement of gambling and also accessibility with cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, all the different avenues of resources to money and loans and currency. We're having to always expand our information education. I would encourage you to do the same. And there's so much on the internet and so many different places, or contact me at LACG and we'll send you some resources. And again, you yourself as a clinician or a concerned person with someone who may have a gambling problem can utilize the Louisiana Problem Gambling Helpline yourself just to gain information. And I would encourage you, if you're a clinician, a professional working with other people, to call it anyway. What I don't do is I don't refer people and use resources that I haven't checked out for my patients. I would recommend you do the same and do a test call. You can be anonymous, you can tell us who you are, whatever, and find out what your patients are listening to or hearing from us. And then if there's any concerns you have or anything you want to tell us about it or feedback, please let us know. We would like to have that. And also the other thing that I agreed to make sure I would mention in this talk today was that we have many avenues of help resources for gambling disorders in Louisiana. One of the best kept secrets in Louisiana is CORE Center of Recovery. It established in 1999. We have treated thousands of Louisianans and also 36 other state residents and people from Japan, Turkey, Mexico, Canada, and the UK have come over hearing about the program to go through our program for gambling disorder. What we have established and continually work on throughout the years is to treat gambling disorder as the primary addiction, which it is, needing to be treated as such, and that if they have other co-occurring disorders, we can address those, but that is not why they are at CORE. They're there to gain as much information, as much counsel, and as much help on gambling disorder, because there isn't as much of that particular type of care for anyone, even in the United States. But Louisiana dedicated a fund when they signed the contracts for the casinos in Louisiana in the 90s to allow a portion of the tax money to be dedicated and funded for treatment, for helpline, for resources, and for training for Louisianans. And so what we want to do is make sure that we use that money to take care of our own. We care, I know you care, but we want to make sure that we refer them to places that they can get free, confidential, and educated help with this problem. And so there are 10 regional offices. We are one in this area that answers our outpatient services for the upper part of the state in this region district area, but there are 9 other offices that do the same. So the best way to find out where those are and who that is providing that care and services is to call the 1-877-770-STOP number. That number will route to the Problem Gambling Helpline for Louisiana, and you can ask for the resources for your patients, or the patients themselves or family can call as well. Some of the different districts will offer family counseling and group counseling for those free of charge as well. That is unheard of in many states across the nation. So we want to make sure that this word gets out, that there is wonderful best practices care in Louisiana, that other states know about us, but also Louisiana needs to know about us, that we're here. And if someone can't get to Shreveport, Louisiana to go to CORE Center of Recovery, well, we will get them a Greyhound bus ticket and we will get them to treatment and get them home if we need to. We want to give people the care they deserve in a good treatment center that focuses on gambling disorder. And so please tell them about CORE. You can go on our website at helpforgambling.org. You can look at a virtual tour of the facility so you can see it first before you send someone. You can call CORE at 318-424-HELP, H-E-L-P, 318-424-HELP. Call them, talk to some of the staff, the director, the intake person, and gather information so that when you get ready, because I'm sure in your groups, I'm sure in your one-to-one private practices, there are people who are struggling and suffering with gambling disorder. But we have to ask those questions like, do you gamble? And then if they do, here's these other two questions. Have you ever lied to someone important to you about your gambling behavior? Yes, indicates a possible problem. Number two, have you ever noticed you started betting more money with your gambling behavior? Yes, they definitely need some help now. And that's where we can step up and help you to help them, or we can provide the care for them at CORE, the treatment center, or outpatient services across the state, or work in collaboration with you as a private practitioner. Whatever it is, we want to help, as do other districts and regions in the state for you. There is no reason in 2023 coming that anyone should struggle with a problem that we have such excellent care in Louisiana. The Office of Behavioral Health has assisted all of us in the state of Louisiana to provide better quality treatment at excellent care services for everyone in Louisiana, and it's free. So please call us today at the helpline, or call one of the numbers I've listed in this talk, so that you, your family, or your patients can receive the help that they need. Thank you for your time and your attention today.
So I would like to thank everyone for the wonderful presentations. I think those of our listeners who have engaged with us this evening have found the information to be a wealth of knowledge. If you are interested in hearing the experiences of other people, we've provided that. We've also provided some of the professional services that are available, as well as provided information from one of the top counselors in the nation for compulsive gambling. At this time, however, we want to move to a live interview between myself and former Senator Karen Carter Peterson. So good afternoon, Karen Carter Peterson.
Good afternoon, Dr. Dunham.
It's so wonderful to have you here and to be willing to share your experience with the audience. And so let's just talk for a few minutes. I think that there are many people who have followed your story, but have not heard from you personally, and would be interested in hearing the path you've taken over these very difficult months since the issues have surfaced more for you. But I'm sure in the conversation, you will share information at dates farther back than this moment in time. So how about we start off with you just sharing a little bit with the audience about what this experience has been like for you with the addiction of compulsive gambling.
Sure. So again, my name is Karen Carter Peterson. I am a compulsive gambler in recovery. I want to say good evening to you, Dr. Dunham, and certainly thank you for hosting this along with your Metropolitan colleagues, the Louisiana Mental Health Association and the Department of Health. I'm very appreciative of the work that all of you do as professionals on a daily basis to provide behavioral health services. And most often it's for free to those of us in Louisiana who desperately need the support, and particularly in this instance, compulsive gamblers. My story is a long one. I mean, it's certainly not going to happen within the next 15 minutes in its entirety. However, folks know my public life. They know the service that I've offered, but they don't know the pain in silence that I suffered, that I guess manifested itself in this addiction. It's a painful process. I've been gambling for over 25 years. My first bet, technically, like in a casino, was when I was 16 years old. I'd gone to the Bahamas, and I was with one of my father's friends, and I was at a blackjack table, and I was playing next to the gentleman, and he was betting, and it was that he wanted to play two hands, and he won, I won, right? Won, whatever that means. And he gave me money on that trip at 16 years old, and I went shopping in the Bahamas. I remember that very specifically. And so, that was the beginning of a treacherous path. This disease is very insidious, very sneaky. I didn't gamble for years after that. But in my first marriage, when I was having some difficulties, I started gambling as an outlet and as an escape. It escalated. And after my divorce from my first marriage, it was really intense. And it grew. Recognized it, went actually to some inpatient programming that Methodist Hospital offered here in New Orleans. But then that at the time, there was no gambling program, like really robust program. And so I was there with others that were suffering from alcohol and substance abuse. So, I did a 2-week stint there and then thought I was ready, but never fully in what I would call recovery. I know that now at the age of 53, that there's abstinence and that there's recovery. But I was abstaining for long periods of times. But what I realized is that whether it was the trauma that I did not talk about from childhood or from college or as an adult, or if it was the depression or the anxiety or the stresses associated with my many jobs that I had, right? Or it's just life, right? And those things culminated with, this insidious disease manifesting itself and causing me to get into a really, really dark place.
So what would you say have been some of the greatest challenges for you in addressing your addiction?
Yeah, so good question. I'd have to say that my greatest challenge was pretty much overcoming my own fears and feelings. I use gambling, as I mentioned, as an outlet for stress, an outlet for anxiety, depression, past trauma. And what, like I said, it would be just life issues. And surrendering was the hardest part. That was the biggest challenge because I thought I could handle it. I can manage it. I'm smart, time and time again, I would say to myself, I can handle, I don't need to, I'm gonna go back, I'm gonna go to the casino, I'm gonna get my money back and I'm gonna be good. I don't have to talk about it with anybody in my family because this just doesn't make sense. But I couldn't control it. And I couldn't stop. It was just a vicious cycle. Because the addiction is insidious and it doesn't recognize educational attainments. It doesn't care about titles, gender, profession, race, none of that matters. It's also very progressive. And the level of engagement, as I think some of my other peers that spoke, they talked about how quickly it escalates if you continue to stay in the disease, and there are no outward signs of it. So most people didn't even know that I was experiencing it. This addiction has the highest rate of suicide. I think Ms. Green mentioned that among all addictions. And I know that the shame, I felt shame and guilt and embarrassment, and that was a challenge to, there was a challenge to overcome that despondent feeling and not want to be here anymore. I mean, I felt that way. I know what that means. And the other challenge of the addiction, I would say, is where it can drive you, where it drove me. I would exhaust all of my personal funds. My family would try to put in safeguards, take away credit cards. And I would say, okay, I'm not going to do it anymore. But the urge was so great, I couldn't control it and I had to escape. And so I went to a dark place and I did things that are outside of my character, my own belief system and values. I broke the law in order to feed my addiction, and I'm not proud of that. I breached the trust of those who believed in me and gave me an opportunity to serve. And for that, I'm truly sorry. And, my life moving forward, my next chapter is going to be about making amends and showing people who I really am and as a healthy KCP. And I'm in the midst of that process, not now, but I know that with God's help, because that's where I'm grounded. And
so you are now in a much better place for hope, it sounds. I would imagine that has not been the conversation that you've had at many points in your life. You mentioned that depression and sadness have co-occurred with the gambling. Had you ever been evaluated and treated for any other co-occurring conditions, the depression per se, a substance use disorder? Were there other diagnoses that you struggled with as well and were being treated for?
Sure, and I'm happy to share that because, I'm just hoping this story will help somebody else, step out of that silent suffering. And yeah, I was suffering with anxiety and depression, and I had past trauma that I really had to dig deep. I went to CORE. Janet just talked a lot about CORE, and it caused me to be still and to just really figure out why I was going through these cycles and doing that. And so, yeah, on occasion, I'd find myself drinking to mask the feelings. But thank goodness that didn't get to the point where it became uncontrolled drinking, but there were times where I was binging. And so I know now after treatment that I need to be very cognizant of my alcohol intake and stay vigilant regarding, other potential comorbidities, because I'm vulnerable and susceptible to that. But the good news is that this isn't, there's light at the end of this darkness. And I've seen that light.
Well, tell us a little bit about what your healing journey looks like right now, the things you're doing, the things that you find are keeping you centered and focused on health at this point.
Sure, happy to do that, Dr. Dunham. And that's really why I'm here. I want to talk about, faith and hope and how things dramatically can change. And for me, it's been just a year of intense introspection. I know there's help for so many others in the same situation. We don't have to live in pain. It all really starts with honesty and acknowledging that we are powerless over this medical condition, and then making sure that we ask for help, calling the number, checking yourself into treatment if necessary, and then just purely surrendering. That's the big one for me. Letting go and letting God. That's what worked. Not Karen's way, but God's way. And although I'd done, as I said, a stint of inpatient treatment years ago and been in outpatient care for many years and been in and out of what we call the GA rooms, that's Gamblers Anonymous for those that don't know, for 2 decades, it was only November 1st, my 52nd birthday last year, where I took a major step in my recovery and I checked myself into CORE, the treatment facility in Shreveport, and a miracle, I would have to say, was underway. There's people like you, Ms. Green, counselors all across the state at human services districts, the Mental Health Association, and the folks certainly at CORE, Janet and Shreveport, and my amazing family and friend circle, the support network that helped me to get healthy and see the light beyond the darkness. I learned more about myself. I faced my fears and my past trauma. I was able to build a toolkit that I now use to survive. I would say, literally a survival toolkit that I use daily. Each person has their own journey in a recovery path, but mine involves taking, small steps one day at a time by building a closer relationship with my higher power, who is God, and trusting that He is with me and working things out for my good. I know I'm a child of God, imperfect, very imperfect human being, as that, may be, but I'm working every day to be more Christ-like. But in order to stay off the bet, that's the little term we use in our Gamblers Anonymous recovery program. I use prayer and meditation. I use individual counseling, daily Gamblers Anonymous meetings. I do that religiously Monday through Friday. When I get off of here at 7 o'clock, I'll be on meetings, journaling, church service, exercise. I'm a fisher woman. If you know me, I'm fishing and I love the water. It brings me peace. And familial support, praise music. I got positive affirmations all throughout the house, among many other things. And just a wonderful, wonderful husband that's very supportive too.
That's a
All
great.
that represents, let me just say this, all that represents learned behavior. Like I had to be diligent about it, develop a regimen, and use these tools when triggers occur. And they occur, trust, because it's life. But because I don't know if you've read this book, Dr. Scott Peck says in the intro to my dad's favorite book, The Road Less Traveled, life is difficult. Problems will rise. The only question is, how are we going to tackle them? Don't run to the casino, Karen. I try to face them head on. And sometimes that happens and I need some help. And I'm not ashamed to ask for it now. Make that call, pick up, call my sponsor, call, somebody on the phone list from GA, call Miss Green. There's always Miss Green.
Well, you've demonstrated over the course of your record, your stellar record as a senator, that of vengeance with which you take responsibility for the things that are within your control. And so it is in you to do everything you're doing now with the same or greater of vengeance, because your life depends upon it at this point, for sure. But one of the accolades you recently acquired is becoming a peer support specialist. How about you tell us a little bit about that and what that means for you moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, that was just amazing. And that's something that's provided by the Louisiana Department of Health. I learned a lot about, it's a relatively new program around the country where, yes, I'm a peer support specialist now. I've got 2 more days that I have to finalize things, but I'm finished the training and I graduated last Friday. It's a great way to stay strong in my recovery by giving back and helping others navigate their own recovery journey. Essentially, I'm using my personal story as evidence, and it can be a powerful message to still, to I guess, help those that are still facing the impact of the addiction right now, feeling like their life is limited and they don't have any hope. But hopefully when I tell my story and help them utilize resources and be a connector, a bridge to help the people that are in the actual peer, the person with the addiction, but also people in the support circle at the agency, the healthcare providers, the clinicians, the psychiatrists, help them as they devise a recovery path for that individual. I can speak from my lived experiences to become that bridge of understanding and connection between the peer and recovery, essentially. And so it's a really exciting program, and I hope that people across the state and agencies like yours, Dr. Dunham, that you increase the number of people in your programming, because I know the pain, I felt it, I know what those compulsive gamblers that are still there going through this, and maybe it can be a spark of hope, and they'll take those simple small steps of courage if they hear and see. Because I knew for me, what really made it possible for me is that, it was places like CORE and through the GA meetings, I saw the faces of recovery. And when I could see it, then I believed that I could be that person too, like a trusted servant saying, oh, I haven't bet since for 40 years, but then their story and they tell their story. I'm like, wow, how deep and dark that was. But look at you, enjoying life, enjoying your family, being present and being, just who we are is really good people. They say all the time that you're not, the worst thing that you've ever done. And I know I'm certainly not, but I'm certainly going to be making amends for the mistakes that I have made.
Well, we so appreciate you taking the time to share such personal information with the group, recognizing that it is your story and the stories of others that have been shared here that can save one life. And if we can save one more, then it's worth all the time we spent this evening. So I thank you, and I'm looking forward to working more closely with you as we move forward on this journey together. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dunham. Looking forward to working with you as well.
Wow, what a wonderful and powerful testimony from former Senator Karen Carter Peterson, Mr. Jackson, and Mr. Bonaventure, who could not be with us today. This certainly has been an extremely moving panel, and I think one takeaway that we can get from it, on my perspective, is that there is hope for anyone who is suffering from this disease. If anyone has any questions for our channel, now is the time to put them in our Q&A. Of course, I want to thank Dr. Dunham with Metropolitan Human Service District for partnering with the Louisiana Mental Health Association for this wonderful event today. It's definitely a topic that I think does not get discussed enough, despite its prevalency and the almost aftermath that this disease can cause. So thank y'all for stepping forward and sharing your stories. Again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. And we will be sharing a survey tomorrow, just to let us know how we can keep improving. And that's going to come out tomorrow, as well as some resources for anyone who is looking for them. Seeing that we have not received Q&A, and I know we're getting to the end, I do want to ask one final question for all of our panelists who joined us today. And that is that if you had one piece of advice for our audience who joined tonight to take away from this presentation, what would it be? And I'll start with Mr. Jackson.
Oh, wow. The one thing that I would like to convey to anybody watching is the fact that there were times in my life where I felt alone, and no matter how alone you feel, there's help out there. There was times where I had to reach out to Miss Janet in the early 90s. She mentioned 1999. That's when I started CORE. And there were years after that, I felt safe with Janet. So I could call Janet and tell her, hey, I relapsed. Where do I go from here? Or Miss Green, I could call Miss Green and feel safe with her, even when I couldn't go to my own family. And so, and at the time, most of the time, I felt like I couldn't even go to God because I was ashamed of what the things I had done. But it was those two individuals, along with Daryl Abear, throughout the years that I could always count on, and I could still count on them till today. And I just want them to know that I love you and I appreciate everything you've done for me throughout the years. But if you're struggling, you're never alone. Don't be afraid. Find that one person that you trust, and you can be safe. And guess what? Although we're defined as problem gamblers, compulsive gamblers, we don't have to be defined by that. We are not our disease. So I just convey to everybody, don't be afraid to reach out for help. You're never alone. And I'm always here if anybody needs to, share some experiences. And I thank everyone else for sharing because it also helped me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson, for sharing that. Ms. Miller?
I think the one thing that would be the takeaway that I'd like everybody to remember from this is, in combination of everybody who spoke tonight, most importantly, those who went through the addiction and into successful recovery, even if there were times they relapsed, that successful recovery is possible and the help is there for everybody who wants it. Just like Mr. Jackson said, is just call and reach out and text and chat, because there's no way that you have to struggle alone anymore. And so I think that's the number one thing I want the takeaway is free help, confidential help, help that works and is successful in Louisiana. And I love that. And I appreciate most of all that those on this panel have shown that it does work and that they're the testimony that makes all of this worthwhile. So thank you.
Thank you. And just someone did quickly ask, I know we're wrapping up, but is there a group or organization that focuses on teen gambling?
I would actually encourage people to contact Dr. Jeff Daravensky in Canada, and they can contact me to get that information. And he is a leader of information of that type of resourcing and referrals, even in the United States.
Thank you. And former Senator Peterson, do you have any takeaways?
I do. First, I think Lionel and Janet did a great job of kind of closing it out. But I'd say if you're experiencing anxiety, depression, stress, or you're feeling powerless over your circumstances, which obviously may include a gambling addiction, help is available to you, and you don't have to endure the pain. You're not alone. There's a place that you can call in Louisiana, as was mentioned, it's free. At every human services district across the state and at CORE for inpatient treatment. I just, had to want the help, and I had to take the first step and not do it for my family. I didn't do it that time. There were many times before, after many relapses, but it's never too late. As I said, it was over 25 years and I'm 53, but probably the healthiest I've ever been in my life. But the other thing I'd say is that we have to meet people where they are. We have to be out in the community talking to folks and asking the right questions. And I know because I kept my addiction hidden based on shame and embarrassment. And that's a very unhealthy place. So hopefully, we as a community can do more advertising, utilizing social media and putting out faces of recovery like Lionel, like Ronnie and so many others on the other side of it, and they'll see the other side of the pain. Will hopefully show that there's another better, healthier way to live and manage our addiction.
Thank you so much. Ms. Green, do you have any last words to share with us? And I think you're on mute. All right, well, we can move on to Dr. Dunham and then see if Ms. Green is able to get herself off mute.
Just want to emphasize what's already been said, that the help begins with you. It starts there. It doesn't end there because there's so much available. And we just want to encourage people to take the time to do this. And then you can become a part of the change for this problem. You can continue to educate and inform those of us who are working with you, learning from your experiences, if you are a part of the change process. So be a part of the change, start it with yourself, and then join us in helping other people make those changes in their lives.
Thank you, Dr. Dunham. I'm gonna see if Ms. Green is able to unmute herself, and if not, we will wrap up. So Ms. Green, are you able to join us real quick for last minute remarks? All right, well, that's all good. We want to thank all of our panelists again, former Senator Peterson, Dr. Dunham, Ms. Miller, Mr. Jackson, Ms. Green, and Mr. Bonaventure for a wonderful and powerful event. I hope that y'all have a great rest of your night. Happy holidays. I will be sending further resources tomorrow for those who weren't able to get the resources written down tonight. They will be available tomorrow. Thank you all so much again, and have a great rest of your evening, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tatiana.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.